Good evening. Call to order the Revere City Council meeting of August 14th, 2007. We'll all rise and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. President.
Roll.
Councilor Rotundo.
May we suspend the rules for one moment, please?
Certainly.
I'd like to take a moment, and I'm sure this body will acknowledge as well, what happened down at Charlottesville, and I'd like to take a moment of silence for those that have passed. And I'd like to go on record, as I do know that the council, the mayor, and this body do not and will not tolerate racism or hate in any form. If you join me for a moment of silence.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Roll call of the members. Councilor Janino?
Here.
Here. Councilor Guanasso?
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna?
Here.
Here. Councilor Morbido?
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky?
Here.
Here. Councilor Patch?
Here.
Here. Councilor Powers?
Here.
Here. Councilor Rotundo?
Present.
Here. Councilor Zambudo?
Here.
Here. And Council Vice President Keith?
Here.
Here. Quorum is present. Council Order 17-296, public hearings. Hearing called is ordered by the City of Revere, Massachusetts. It was determined that public convenience and necessity requires the taking by eminent domain of certain land located within the City of Revere, described in Exhibit A and Exhibit B and attached hereto, for sidewalk and pedestrian access way construction and improvements along, on, or near certain sections of Avalon Street, Blake Street, Centennial Avenue, Dick Street, Fitzhenry Square, Garfield Ave, North Shore Road, and Waverly Ave, in Revere, Suffolk, Massachusetts, known as Safe Routes to the Garfield School.
Thank you. At this time, we would ask that any proponents that would wish to come up and speak on behalf of this project, please. Name and address, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the eminent domain takings that are being discussed today. As I think this council probably knows, the Garfield School, Safe Routes to School program has been one that has been actually predated my administration, but it represents a $1.3 million investment in our infrastructure, both streets and sidewalks down in the Garfield Ave area, Garfield School area. And our team, the city's team behind me, can speak to some of the more intricate details, but this has been ongoing, and we are now at the point where this project will come to completion, and we will be able to see that area become a lot safer for the children who are going to school every day. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other proponents?
Hi, I'm just here if anyone has any questions about the taking itself or the recording or what you're asked to vote on tonight. I assume you're all familiar with the project. The mayor's told you about it in the past. I know you've already allocated funding for it earlier in the year, but if you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the taking itself or about the amounts we're paying or anything like that. Any questions at all? If you don't have any, that's fine too.
Thank you, Mr. Capizzi. Before I open it up to questions, can I just ask that any other proponents come up, and then we'll go to questions for you. Any other proponents? Any other proponents? Any opponents? Any opponents? Closing that side of the hearing. So any councils that would wish to ask Mr. Capizzi any questions? Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. You. How are you doing today?
Good. Yourself?
Excellent. Very good, thank you. How many properties in total at this time?
We are taking, I wrote it down because I anticipated that question. We are taking 8 permanent easements.
Okay.
And we are taking 43 temporary easements, temporary meaning they're only easements of ours for 3 years, after which the ownership rights go right back to the property owner.
It returns, okay. And what's our total cost at this point?
It's a bargain. It is, the total cost for to all 32 owners for all those easements is $36,350.
And has anybody given you any resistance that might lend you to the idea that you'll end up in court in 6 months?
I have not received resistance from anybody.
Perfect. Thank you so kindly, and you deserve a raise.
Thank you. Can we talk about, oh, no, it's probably not appropriate. Not on
Councilor
the agenda.
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one question. With these sidewalks, if you know, sidewalks are required to be handicapped accessible. Are all of these sidewalks going to remain handicapped accessible?
You know, I asked Nick Rystrom to be here. I haven't read all the plans. Julie may know more, as far as I know.
Maybe Julie can
Yeah.
answer that.
Yeah.
So there are go ahead.
Julie DeMauro, Revere on the Move, Active Living Coordinator. I've been working on this project since 2012. There is going to be brand-new sidewalks that will be all handicap accessible.
Every one of them, right?
Within the scope of the project. So right now, we're looking at Fitzhenry Square, Waverly Ave, Blake Ave, all of the streets and areas that Ashley has named off in the original motion for tonight. There are some sections that will not be completed because the scope of the work, it doesn't go down that far on certain streets, but we are working with MassDOT to see if we can get additional funding to expand the scope further down. We're hoping to, but that will be something that comes after this project is completed so that we can line up with their scope of the work. So we're hoping that will come true as well.
Thank you very much.
You're
That
welcome.
answers my question.
Councilor Morabito?
Thank you. Quick question. I know you, Paul, yeah. So you mentioned there was 8 permanent,
Easements.
yeah, and 44 temporary,
Correct.
right? Okay, because you said 43 originally, so I just wanted to make sure, because
Hold on, let me
the
double
letter
check.
says 44.
It could be a typo. That could be my fault.
Also, I know,
I have 43. There are also 3 that belong to the city, which oddly enough, we also have to vote on tonight separately. So I don't know if that was included. If you include the temporary easement of the city, that makes it 44.
okay,
But 43 that are owned by people other than the city of Revere.
okay. I know you said there was no resistance with property owners. They were sent a letter?
Yep, everyone was
Okay.
notified. They were invited to public meetings. I know that, I think there was 2 that Julie was a part of, and we also sent them a notification letter along with the release in W-9 so that they could get payment as soon as possible.
And what are we doing to make the quality of business and quality of life better for these people, the residents and business owners in that area?
You mean while the project is
Yeah,
ongoing?
because we don't want to interrupt their business or their.
I don't think there's going to be much interruption. Again, Nick Rystrom isn't here. This is simply the putting in of new sidewalks over those particular streets that Julie mentioned that Ashley read off. I don't know that any businesses really are going to be inconvenienced. I know there's a couple auto body shops on North Shore Road, but I don't think they can expect any real hassle from this. Sidewalks are a pretty easygoing project. They're usually done pretty quickly.
All I ask is that you work with the residents and business owners
Absolutely.
in that area to
Oh, yeah,
make their life
absolutely.
easy as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So can I just add to that as well? So when the project does start to kick off, it's going to be done in stages. Most of the work that is, once this goes through, it's supposed to start in the spring of 2018, if everything goes as planned. If most of that work will actually be focused around the school first, and then it will work its way out, because they want to get the bulk of the work done around the Garfield School area completed before the kids come back in the summer. There will be several planning meetings, too, with the state when this project does happen, so that we can minimize any type of risk to any businesses, especially to the pedestrians and the students of the school. So our first priority really is going to be the students walking to the school, because the number of kids that walk to the Garfield School is exceptionally high. We're talking over 95% of the students walk to the Garfield. That's a high percentage, it's the highest in the city. So our main priorities right now is making sure that they get to school safely and that there's no disruption, and that they're out of the construction area as well.
Excellent. I'm all for this program. I commend you on a great job. It took a long time, and you've been working on this. I remember when you brought this to my attention a long time ago, and it's good. I'm glad to see it come to fruition.
Thank you.
The reason I asked this question is because the other day I noticed there was some equipment, like some tractors. They weren't doing any work, but they were just sitting there on the side streets, and there was they were there for about 6 hours. So I just wanted to make sure there was no inconvenience for the business owners or the residents in that area if they're not using equipment, that they're going to actually put it away or put it aside.
So I'm not quite sure that the equipment was there for this project,
Yeah.
because this project hasn't gone out for bid yet. So I
Really?
would
Because
assume
it was on,
in that area.
yeah.
Okay, I guess we
It was
just have
off
to let
on
us know.
Blake Street.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I thought it was part of this project.
We can look into that
Yeah.
to make sure, but there shouldn't be any equipment at this time because
Okay.
the project has not gone out to bid yet with MassDOT. So
Okay.
they are going to be the ones in charge of the construction. But
Okay.
we'll look into it, definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilor McKenna?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Julie, I just want to know, are you going to continue this program along the way in the future for other schools? Like Beachmont is very difficult to get to, to walk through Donnelly Square, and, Lincoln School also. So I was wondering, all the schools really are basically very difficult to walk. They have major highways and streets. So are we going to continue this program along the way in the future?
I would love to. This is this $1.3 million worth of infrastructure work for kids to walk to school. This is a big chunk of change. This is their biggest project that they've had in the last 5 years. I would love to see it duplicated, especially at Beachmont. We were out in Beachmont not too long ago. We did a walk audit of Donnelly Square. The thing is that the way the program works is that you apply, and then they come out and they take a look and see what's going on in the school. The day that the MassDOT engineers had come out to assess the school, they were just amazed at the number of students that actually come off the backside of Shirley Ave. And what I mean by that is they come down Florence Street to Fitzhenry Square, and they cross that way. And they were just floored at the number of children that were walking the same path. So those engineers and the MassDOT representatives, they pushed this project forward. We also here in the city kind of kept on it by going to our state reps and saying, where are we in the queue? Where are we in the queue? Because of the high need of quality sidewalks and infrastructure work, and because of the number of students walking to school in the area, and we have a lot of data to back that up, 2010, 2012, as well as 2014, the numbers continue to rise a little bit. But they haven't dropped at all. So the state felt as though that this was a great project to do. The original assessment was to do just one side of certain streets, but then when they went, and that came in at $900,000, but then when they went back out and they realized that some of the work needs to be duplicated on the other side of certain streets, that bumped the price up to 1.3. So we would need to look at our next school after this and kind of assess what would be the best school, what's the highest school would be the need. So it could be that we do look at Beachmont, which has a high walking ratio. The second school in the city that has the highest number of children walking is actually the Hill School. And right now, we're kind of at a loss. We have brand new infrastructure around there. But we can certainly ask to put in another application once this wraps up.
I'm just concerned with all the development that's going to be taking place in Ward 1, that Beachmont is going to be highly impacted with traffic and kids walking to school, so.
So Donnelly Square is definitely an issue right now, not just for the kids walking to school, but also the residents that are moving into the area. We were out there last week. We had one of the Beachmont Improvement Committee. I'm working with them to take some pedestrian counts and see what's happening in the square, see where the conflicts are between the motorists and the pedestrians and cyclists too, we have a lot of people on bikes as well. And I think to really put the pedestrian infrastructure that you need in that square is that you have to come up with some hard numbers in terms of how many people are crossing the street, how many times there's conflicts between cars and drivers. What I mean by that is if especially at that light at the Beachmont train station, if the light is red and the driver has the right to turn right, they can't see the pedestrians walking. That's something that we all need to start actually taking the data down. And that's something that we would turn over to MassDOT and say, hey, look, this square is now becoming it's being used more by pedestrians than cars. So we need to change the level of service to favor the pedestrian or make it somewhat equal between the pedestrian and the cars. So I'd be more than happy to talk with you a little bit more about that afterwards.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Council Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Julie, in your initial review back in 2010, was there a review done in the Paul Revere and the Lincoln School areas?
Yes, so the review, the original walk surveys were done for the Wayland School, the Paul Revere School, and the Garfield School. And what we noticed that nobody was walking at Wayland. The numbers were really, really low. What we noticed at Garfield was everybody was walking. And for Paul Revere, we have a large percentage of kids walking, except after, but we also have a large percentage of kids taking the bus. And what that is those students that live in the Pines and live in Oak Island, because if they live so far away from the school, and plus you have a highway that divides it, we would never encourage those kids to walk to school. But the majority of students living within a half a mile to 3/4 of a mile out from the Paul Revere are walking, which is a great, great sign. Same thing with the Garfield School. So the way that the survey works is it's anonymous. You just you put in your street, your grade, and how you got to school that day, and then we plot it on a map. And I have all the survey data in my office. Anybody is welcome to it at any time.
How about the Lincoln School?
The Lincoln School, that has been an increase.
I would imagine quite a few children come from the Housing Authority to go up Broadway and go to the Lincoln School, and they go off the side streets, all coming up off of Malden Street.
Right. So the first assessment for the Lincoln School was done in 2011, and then when we resurveyed them again in 2014, we saw an increase of 40% of children walking to school. What we do notice there is, and we've also changed some things around for the infrastructure around the school. That's an ongoing situation there in terms of keeping it safe for children to walk to school. Once we worked with the parents and worked with the police and put some enforcement out there, we saw more families starting to walk to school from Broadway, both sides of Broadway, north and south. We also saw more families walking from Malden Street as well. The only place that, and once again, we don't encourage them to walk to school because we consider it dangerous. It would be North Revere. It's over 2 miles away. And the Ward Street area, because once again, you have to cross the highway.
I would suggest very strongly, Julie, that in the past 5 years, the demographics in that particular area has grown drastically and changed drastically. And I think it's more in tune to children walking to school. And when I make my visits to the schools and I check out the school areas, I see quite a few children being walked to school and walking to school by themselves.
Yes.
And that I'm kind of concerned with, because if this opportunity is available, I think we as a community should do everything we can to secure this type of funding so that we can provide a safety value for all of our children. And I applaud the efforts going down in Ward 2, and I think that that's a step in the right direction. And unfortunately, it's painstaking to see how long it takes to develop. And, so we'd like to see it done sooner than later. And certainly the opportunity is there, because I think if we were to have these individuals come and revisit our community, they would see a completely different picture. And they would see something that's changed drastically.
So our plan is to resurvey the district because we haven't done it again since 2014. So when we resurvey the district, it would be all of the elementary schools would get the survey again, and then we would look at to see where the increases are, where the dips are. But we also have to look and see in terms of, like you said, there's been a lot of activity in the Lincoln School area, a lot more families are moving in, the houses are turning over, but there could be a situation if we see a dip in one neighborhood, it could be because those kids have outgrown the school
There's a
system.
tremendous amount of new children coming to the community.
Yeah, but one thing that the Lincoln School is that we have been working on consistently, we were out there this morning, looking at putting a new crosswalk there, how best to get the kids safely across the street. So now that you say that, the Lincoln School may be the next school that we really target for this program, because I think there's a lot of infrastructure work that should be done that could make it safer for all kids walking to school in all
Absolutely.
directions.
I
So we
agree.
could look at that.
Any way I can assist, I'll be glad to do so.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Council Ganasso. We have a few others. Councilor Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Julie, as you know, the Wayland School, you started that walk trail there and you know how bad the sidewalks are on that trail. But I'm just, I want to expand on what Councilor Ganasso said about the influx of kids, families, even on my street, Johnny Road. We have, in the last 2 years, we probably have 10 kids now playing out in the street, and some of them do walk to I see them walking to the Whale. And as you know, on Sergeant Street, which is really, really bad on the side of the school, they have to walk in the street, especially one that has to bring the baby carriage with the, with the walk, the sister. I know that that whole problem from I want to call it your trail, from Newhall, Malden to Washington Ave, up Sergeant. A lot of elderly use it too. I know you run it, but I walk it. But it's it's really a disgrace in some places with the sidewalks. You have to go on the street. So I think just in the future, I hope this is a great project, and I'm gonna vote for it. But I would hope in the future that we could probably correct in my ward, Ward 6, the Whale and Susan B. Anthony at the school around that area.
So when we did the original assessment for Garfield School, the Whalen was also put in as well, because at the time, the Whalen School was doing the walking school bus, and Garfield was starting to reciprocate it. But when the state came out to look at the infrastructure and the number of kids walking, the Whalen School at the time did not have the percentage that the Garfield School did. So they felt that the justification really was in the Garfield School area, particularly in those streets that are being named. But once again, I mean, this program's up every year. I think the best thing really for all of us to do moving forward, I mean, who wouldn't like free money to redo sidewalks and all of that? But I think once we resurvey the district, we'll be able to really see where the need is, where the increases are. In terms of Sergeant Street, a couple of years back, we were out there with we did some work through the child safety funds to we noticed where the kids were walking that there should be a crosswalk there. That kind of helps also calm some of the traffic on Sergeant Street in the morning. So we are making improvements along that roadway. I do know that Sergeant Street did have handicap ramps put in, I think from Wentworth all the way down to Green Tree Lane. And I do know that Mass DOT, it's because I think that's their portion of the work, has put in a handicap ramp or the continuous flow of the curb cuts right where the dog park is. So once that is all completed, you should be able to just not have to step off the curb, but just kind of walk right onto the street.
Yeah, you're correct. They did a nice job putting those ramps in. No, I agree with you that the Garfield probably needs it, but the way that the increase is coming in my ward now, just within the last couple of years, it's going to be needed in the near future. I'm sure a
Okay.
similar project. But thank you for all your good work.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo, and then we'll go to Counselor Novoselsky.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Couple of questions, more tangents than anything else. What percentage, what school has the highest percentage of people walking? You said it was Garfield, correct?
Garfield has the highest percentage.
And does that lend itself to the fact that the children from that area live within that area?
There's several factors going on in that area. So on the survey, it actually asked, do you have a driver's license? Do you own a car? So the lowest respondents for car ownership and having a driver's license is in that area. So there could be several factors. Maybe they can't afford to drive a car, maybe they don't have a license. But when you look at that, and then you look at West Revere, you look at the Lincoln, you look at the Wayland, the percentage of car ownership, the number of members in the household who actually have a driver's license, it's extremely high. So internally, we have our own ideas as to why that is the highest number, but most likely there's some economic factors as to why they settle there because they're able to get the kids to school, they're able to get on the blue line, they're able to get around without a vehicle.
So having actually done some grant writing for a local home care company, it's actually census tract driven. So that census tract in particular is probably one of the lowest, income driven part of the city. But we're all pretty close. Census tract, the one up in North Revere, as well as the one in what I would call the Fennel Street area abutting Chelsea is also within that same parameter. So you don't coalesce your programming towards the schools, do you? Because at this point, my thought is, how much of the ability to actually now formulate where our children go to school in the neighborhood per se versus, having to bus them, which is also another issue that engenders costs and so forth.
So right now, I mean, that's something that we can look at through that. But one of the things that I do want to bring attention to, the Hill School, there is no busing. Garfield School, there's only busing for the middle school because we're bringing kids from all across the city to it. But for the elementary school, there's no busing. Lincoln School, because that has become a shift, and we're now taking students from North Revere as well as from the Ward Street area, they're 2 miles out. You know what I mean? If they don't have a car, that the bus is the only way to get them to school.
The only three places would be, or four, would be Garfield, Beachmont, and the Wayland, so to speak, because of the middle school aspects of it.
Correct,
Which is
correct. And then the Paul Revere, if you didn't have any students coming from Oak Island
Then there'd be
or
no-
Point of Pines, then you wouldn't have busing.
Correct.
So, I mean, we could, the survey was actually designed by MAPC, and they're always looking for
Right.
ways to fine tune it. So we could ask, before we survey the district again, to work with them and see if we can get some other information. We did do some work in Chelsea with the same survey, and one of the things we found was that a lot of the kids go to after-school programs. And so a lot of the parents, like, my kids go to an after-school program. Is there any way you could put that on the survey? Well, we didn't think of that. So we're getting all
question.
these kids walking or being dropped off to school, but getting home, the answer was blank. So, I mean, this could something that we all could look at and use it to our advantage, and then work with MAPC to tailor it to our needs.
Thank you again for your hard work, and Mr. President, if I may forward this to you, perhaps there might be some people in the audience that might have some questions as well. Thank you.
You're
Sure.
welcome.
Certainly. We also have Counselor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. First of all, I want to thank the mayor for pursuing this project and
putting Julie on it, and she's been terrific. She and I have literally been working on this for the last 5 years, when we first met down the Garfield School with Mass Dot. And it was a very interesting meeting, and I can say that the amount of kids that go to school, you know, I've gone to walk to school on Wednesdays, many times. And it's amazing to see the number of kids that we meet at Costa Park and walk up Walnut Ave, down Campbell Ave, and there's a whole slew of people, kids, coming down Centennial Ave, and they all merge at Fitzhenry Square, and we have 150 kids walking to school on a
At once.
Wednesday morning, all at once.
At once.
And it's just amazing. It's like the Pied Piper is in town and all, they're following going to school. But I just want to say that. But and just in a little sidebar to Council Morabito, currently the work that's being done on North Shore Road is being done by National Grid, and it is in anticipation of this project. It's a preempt, because they know the streets are going to be redone, next year at some point. So they have to get all their utilities in place before we do the streets. As if we've talked about before, we want all the utility work and infrastructure work done before we do a finalization of a street. So granted, there is equipment on some of the side streets, because North Shore Road is a state highway, and there's really no room to put these large pieces of equipment. I call them growing pains. We have to put up with some stuff while they're doing work. And I've only had one complaint about the large equipment and taking up some parking spaces. But it's something that those streets are normally empty during the day anyways, and most of the concerns are at night, when they keep them parked overnight. So just so you know, that's what's going on down there.
Thank you for
You're
the
welcome.
clarification.
Thank you, Councilor
So,
Novoselsky.
I'm not through yet, if I may. I just want to remind everybody that 2 months ago, we accepted Lake Street, Avalon Street, and Alger Way as legal streets in the city of Revere, leading up to where we are right now, because it was required, it was never done before. And we also put up $100,000 into this project out of the city coffers. Now, I put up 10% of a project any day, because the project is over $1 million, and we only have to put up $100,000. I think that's a pretty good deal. But I do want to thank Mass Dot for their work on this and keeping up with it and coming to this point. And just so everybody knows, even in the spring, when this does, after it gets bid, there's going to be growing pains just on the construction. Are people going to be inconvenienced? Yes, but realize it's the safety of the kids that we're talking about. And in some cases, it's even making safety issues at intersections. So people aren't darting out with their cars into flowing traffic. It's making them stop and take a hard right turn or a hard left turn to get where they wanted to go. But it's a great project. I'm glad we're pursuing it. I'm glad, of course, it's in my ward, so I'm even happier, that it was recognized that we have these many kids going to the Garfield School, which is a great, great school. Like all the other schools are great. But, it's my school. I went to the Garfield, not this one. But it's nice to see that, the kids walking to school are being recognized by everybody. And I thank all the counselors for all their efforts and their cooperation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Novoselsky. Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And thank you, Julie, for all the work that you do in the community and on this project. It's a very big undertaking, and a lot of years of time and effort have went into this project, so we do appreciate it. I only have one comment on it, and it was actually Councilor Patch's thought that reminded me of it. A huge issue we have in Ward 6 with the sidewalks and maintenance is trees. And a lot of times we'll put in these beautiful sidewalks, and in a couple of years, the roots of the trees completely uproot them, and it causes a huge safety hazard for kids walking and anyone traversing on the streets, and especially in that Ward 6, the Grover Manor loop, if you will. The roots are crazy, and they're ruining the sidewalks in that whole area. So I just want to make sure that when we're putting all these beautiful new sidewalks down, that we're either, planting trees that are appropriate, that have shallow roots that aren't going to cause this issue over and over again, and we're working with the ones that are already existing, so it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Councilor Genio. I believe those trees, are those supposed to be, the standard is a pear tree, correct? That doesn't,
I
heavy
think
root?
so, yeah. They're putting in new trees that don't have a lot of roots. One thing I want to comment on that, with the new 311 system, a lot of the complaints that are coming in are uprooted sidewalk panels due to the tree roots. So if you see that, take a picture, send it to the 311, and it will get rerouted. It will get looked at and taken care of, so.
I appreciate that, because I walk my dog around that Grover Manor Loop a lot, and there's a lot, that whole area, and I'm sure Councilor Patch can attest to it, because they're older trees, and it's beautiful to have them in our neighborhood, but at the same time, we want them to be safe. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a great point.
You're welcome.
And I know we had someone in the audience that had a question.
Hi, Eric Lampadecchio, 43 Tapley Avenue. As a former student of the Garfield School, it's great to hear that that area is finally getting some infrastructure improvements. I do have a question. Does this program, or could this program be applicable to the high school area? I know the folks down East Mountain Ave and True Street have had some real big issues with atrocious sidewalks or no sidewalks at all.
I'm not so sure how far up the grade level it goes. I do know that they have done some work in the middle schools down in Stoughton and I believe in Easton. But once again, the high school's a little trickier because we've tried to do some walk assessments and cycling bike assessments in the high school. We can't get the kids to return the forms. But if we could get the kids to return the form, maybe we could have some data that we could present to the state and we could look at that as well. So we could try it. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Rotundo.
That's an O, not an A. Through you to Mrs. DeMore, if I could. The question actually funnels around the idea of the high school. I see them, the children pretty much day in and day out while school's in cross the highway. My thought would be, and I know that there had been talk at one point with Bob O'Brien regarding a linkage between, the western part of the city to, say, the eastern part. My hope would be is if we could gather data and possibly even ask the state if we could actually make a, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Pedestrian bridge.
Thank you kindly. A little tired today, but yeah, pedestrian bridge from the high school into perhaps, say, Necco or some other, area in that vicinity to help facilitate it. I think the people that currently own it would be considerate of that, and it would be a great thing to have the ability in the future to link, the high school through Necco into Wonderland, and then into Wonderland, the actual MBTA station with an overhead, link as well, and then into the beach. That would be a great way to connect and actually bring our city together.
So one of my first walk audits I did was with a group of high school students from Shirley Ave, walking to the high school, and I will never forget that day because I said to them, we're at the top of Shirley Ave, and the highway's running this way, and I say to them, show me how you get to school. They basically step right out onto incoming traffic. I'm like, get back here, get back on this curb. I'm like, we are not walking this way. But forcing the kids to go through the actual crossing system in the circle was too far out of their way.
It's also dangerous up
It's
there,
very
too,
dangerous
because
as
they don't
well.
stop
And at the
appropriately.
time, the lights were all off, so after we did that walk assessment through the circle, through the crosswalks, and the students that I walked with that day, they were not happy with me. They basically shut down after the walk audit. I couldn't get any more information out of them because I made them walk through use the crosswalks and wait. But from that, we were able to have MassDOT come out, and they were able to change the lights. But one of the things that we did talk about was the pedestrian footbridge over the highway. And one of the things that they had said, so if we look at the most direct path, which would be basically over the shopping area and then back over the bank and then kind of put it right where that wall is. You would have to take down the wall, that retaining wall, so that would be
Well, okay, I'm missing you, I'm sorry.
because anytime you put like a pedestrian footbridge, you need a good, I don't know what the square footage is, but the amount of, for the footing
yeah.
of it is considerably large, and we don't have the room over there unless we take that by eminent domain.
Which would be fine.
But you're talking about a huge retaining wall that would need to come down. So that wall that's right near the car dealership would need to come down. We could look at other ways to,
I personally like the idea of where the field is, bringing it over towards Necco. It's the least point of
Yeah.
resistance, but that's a pipe dream at this
right,
point.
I mean, it's something that MassDOT is aware of, and that's, but at this point, they really need to kind of put some other infrastructure in there to alleviate some of the stress of the pedestrian crossing.
My fear is sooner or later, some child is going to get killed by their lack of fear, so to speak.
It's a concern it's valid and has been brought up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Zambuto.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't want to miss an opportunity to thank Julie for her hard work. And I'm sure most of us know that Julie was a volunteer activist for many, many years before she started to get a small compensation for what she does. So I just want to publicly thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Councilor Zambuto. I couldn't agree more. I got to know Julie through the Walk to School program as well. I think I was one of the leaders on one of the stations for the initial Walk to School program many years ago, and I appreciate you involving me in that project. There's no doubt that the entire council is championing for better sidewalks and safe routes to their schools in the different districts of Revere. And I'm glad to see such great energy around it. So thank you for this, and thank you to the Mass DOT. I'm sure this will vote favorably tonight, and I hope to see that this program can continue. And I know that there was a mention of an additional pay. I think the information Julie gave us tonight, hopefully she's getting paid well enough for the detailed information she was able to provide. So we'll close that from the councils, and we'll roll call.
Now therefore, it is ordered that a certain parcel, as described herein in the attached Exhibit A, be and is hereby taken in fee simple for the purpose of adopting and laying out a public way for public access purposes. Said property and taking is shown on a plan of land entitled Taking Plan of Land, Safe Routes to Schools, Garfield Avenue, City of Revere, Suffolk County, Massachusetts, dated May 16th, 2017, prepared by Niche Engineering, Inc., and said taking being made and laid out under the provisions of Chapter 43, Section 30, and Chapter 79 of the General Laws. Said plan is hereby made a part of this order and is to be recorded with the order of taking in the Registry of Deeds for Suffolk County at Boston. Further, that certain permanent easement rights and temporary easement rights, as described in the attached Exhibit B and hereby are taken for public access purposes, and said permanent and temporary easements shall include the right of ingress and egress to, upon, and over said land at all times, to construct, maintain, and operate, repair, and replace said public sidewalks and public access ways, reserving to the owner of the property the right to use said land for any purpose except such as may obstruct or injure said maintenance of or public access to said property, and that the City of Revere agrees that in construction, maintenance, operation, repair, or replacement of said public sidewalks and public access ways on the property, that it will, at its own expense, restore surface of said land to the same conditions which existed prior thereto, and that said temporary easements, as described in the attached Exhibit B, are for the express purpose of construction work and shall terminate 3 years from the date of recording of this order of taking. Said takings being made and laid out under the provisions of Chapter 43, Section 30, and Chapter 79 of the General Laws. Said permanent easement and temporary easement takings are shown on plan entitled Easement of Land, Safe Routes to School, Garfield School, City of Revere, Suffolk County, dated May 16, 2017, prepared by Niche Engineering, Inc., said takings being made and laid out under the provisions of Chapter 43, Section 30, and Chapter 79 of the general laws. Said plan is hereby made a part of this order and is to be recorded with the order of taking in the Registry of Deeds for Suffolk County of Boston for damages sustained by the owner or owners of the property and all other persons, including all mortgagees of record having any and all interest in the property by reason of the aforesaid taking and in accordance with the provisions of general laws, Chapter 79, Section 6, as amended, awards are made. The city reserves the right to amend the awards at any time prior to the payment thereof by reason of a change in ownership or value of said property before the right to damages therefore become vested or for other good cause shown. Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo. Yes. Councilor Zambuto is recused, and Council Vice President Keefe.
Yes.
Yes, the order of taking has been approved. Council Vice President Keefe, there's one other order, declaration and dedication of public land located at Alger Road, Blake Street, and Avalon Street in Revere, Massachusetts, for temporary construction purposes and perpetual public access and public ways purposes.
This is going right to a roll call. Or any councilors wishing to speak on this? Roll call.
The City of Revere, a municipal corporation and body politic and corporate, and a political subdivision of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, having a place of business at City Hall, 281 Broadway, Revere, Massachusetts, known as the City, as the owner of certain city property located at a portion of Alger Road and a portion at the corner of Blake Street and Alger Road and at the southern end of Avalon Street in Revere, Massachusetts, the city property, acting by and through its mayor and city council, and upon the authority of vote by the city council and approval by the mayor, and by virtue of every other power and authority hereto enabling the city, hereby declares and dedicates portions of the city parcels for construction purposes and for public access, public ways, and public sidewalks in connection with the city's Safe Routes to School project for the Garfield Middle School at 176 Garfield Ave, Massachusetts, known as the project, and as follows. The portions of the city property to which this declaration and dedication applies are shown on the plan containing two sheets entitled Easement Plan of Land, Safe Routes to Schools, Garfield School, City of Revere, Suffolk County, prepared by Niche Engineering and dated May 16, 2017, known as the plan, a true copy of which plan will be recorded at the Suffolk County Registry of Deeds, known as the registry, herewith. A reduced copy of the plan is attached hereto as Exhibit A. Perpetual rights. The city and the general public shall have the non-exclusive perpetual right to enter upon, travel over, maintain, repair, and use those portions of the city property on the plan and listed below the parcels for public access and public ways and sidewalks and all other purposes for which ways are used in the City of Revere and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The parcels are as follows. Map block and parcel 4-92-7A on Alger Road, 1,255 square feet. Map block and parcel 4-92-7A-92A, Alger Road and Blake Street, 5 square feet. And map block and parcel 4-92-7A, Avalon Street, 148 square feet. Such purposes, uses, and improvements include, by way of illustration and without limitation, passage for pedestrians, vehicles, and bicyclists, and pavement and improvements for sidewalks, pathways, grading, sloping, and drainage. The city shall not make any improvements to the parcels materially inconsistent with the allowed purposes described above. In so dedicating the parcels, the city intends to have the above described rights over the above described parcels to be perpetual in duration, and to have the parcels used for public access and public ways and sidewalks and all other purposes for which ways are used in the City of Revere and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in furtherance of numerous public policies to create convenient and safe public access and travel. To that end, if for any reason this declaration and dedication shall be deemed subject to sunsetting provisions, terminated, void, or voidable on any grounds, or other principles requiring duration less than perpetual, then the city and its successors shall undertake and carry out all reasonably necessary measures to extend, adopt, and/or renew the terms of this declaration and dedication to ensure that the parcels are permanently used in a manner consistent with the terms and intent of this declaration and dedication. Temporary rights. The city and the general public shall have the non-exclusive temporary right to enter upon, travel over, maintain, repair, and use those portions of the city property shown on the plan and listed below the parcel for public access and public ways and sidewalks and all other purposes for which ways are used in the City of Revere and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Such purposes, uses, and improvements include, by way of illustration and without limitation, passage for pedestrians, vehicles, and bicyclists, and pavement and improvements for sidewalks, pathways, grading, sloping, and drainage. The city shall not make any improvements to the parcels materially inconsistent with the allowed purposes described during the term of such temporary rights. This parcel is identified as map block and parcel 4-92-7A, Avalon Street, 3,164 square feet. Such purposes, uses, and improvements include, by way of illustration and without limitation, passage for pedestrians, vehicles, and bicyclists, and pavement and improvements for sidewalks, pathways, grading, sloping, and drainage. The city shall not make any improvements to the parcels materially consistent with the allowed purposes described above. In so dedicating the parcels, the city intends to have the above described rights over the above described parcels to be temporary in duration, expiring on the date that is 3 years from the date of this instrument is recorded at the registry, and to have the parcels used for public access and public ways and sidewalks and all other purposes for which ways are used in the City of Revere and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in furtherance of numerous public policies to create convenient and safe public access travel. We direct that this instrument be filed with the registry and with the city clerk. In the event any provision of this instrument is deemed by a court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid, illegal, or unenforceable, the remainder of this instrument shall be valid and enforceable to the fullest extent permitted by law. For the city's authority to dedicate city property pursuant to this instrument, see the certified copy of the vote attached here too. Councilor Gino.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo is recused, and Council Vice President Keefe.
Yes.
Yes, the streets have been declared and dedicated as public land.
And that ends tonight's meeting. We will have our next scheduled meeting on August 28th at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. Thank you and have a great night.